little crew here. They're trying to dodge me, everybody. I want y'all to know. All the people trying to dodge me. But again, I wanted just to come back live again and just to echo what everybody was saying about the importance of talking about mental health.
Yes.
Because when you see the words mental health, a lot of people run away from us or they don't want to talk about it. You know, once they see that sign, mental health, they're like, oh, I'm out.
It's
And
the stigma.
Yes.
stigma, what is stigma?
So the stigma is the negative assumption of about anything because you don't know the understanding and the real truth. So we understand that mental illness is a chemical imbalance of the brain. It can be chemically induced with substances. It can be because of a life event, either positive or negative. And we say, well, how can a positive life event cause you to have negative mental health symptoms? Because of the stress. If you're getting married and you have a $20,000 wedding and you know you live on $700 a month, that's stressful. You're having your fourth kid, and yes, you're happy, but you know that's another person that you're responsible for. Those are life events that are stressful, but they're also blessings. So all of these different things play a part in our everyday, day-to-day lives and our stressors. And just understanding that some people cope and handle things differently. And that's where talking to a therapist, finding a coach, a therapist, connecting with the PRP program to get additional supports where that comes into play.
Okay, so you mentioned stigma, which is what keeps people from getting the mental health support. Before I move on, do you have anything you want to say about stigma?
Yeah, it, the stigma has caused so many people to be fearful of even dealing with or interacting with anyone that has a mental illness, number one, or that stigma has caused them to uh, have to feel shameful, embarrassed. All these things will cause them not to get the help that they need because of stigma.
So now we talk about stigma, and Ms. Wilson was talking about different resources. So again, when we talk about mental illness, we have mental illness, which we know um, under the heading of mental illness, then we have severe and persistent mental illnesses, right? And what severe and persistent mental illnesses, what severe and persistent mental illnesses, that's schizophrenia, bipolar, and things of that nature, right? So there are different methods for different ones. Like for example, with some treatments as far as depression, you may need medications, you may be able just to talk to someone, but you mentioned PRP. And I want to make sure everybody may not know what the PRP is. That when you look at severe and persistent mental illnesses, for example, and we use the term severe and persistent because those are the disorders that last so long and that they impact all aspects of an individual's life. So that's why we call them severe, persistent mental illnesses. Again, in that category, people marry, they go to school, a lot of things people do, but sometimes there are some people who may not be able to. And I believe one of our other colleagues used the term, there was a term that she used, quote unquote, lower functioning. So again, that's like a term that people kind of use within the field, just saying that this is someone who may be more impacted by the mental illness, right? But PRP, Psych Rehabilitation Program, is the program, if you want to explain that, but that's specifically for people who may be
Lower
have more,
functioning,
or
higher
and again,
functioning.
we would definitely say lower functioning, but
Mhm.
we use that term, but it's an
They
older
need more
term.
supports in the
Right, more
community.
support, more community
So that
support.
means it could range from helping you to schedule doctor's visits, helping you to go through your mail. If opening mail is overwhelming, and I'll give a brief example. I had a member that was an independent business owner for several years. His mother passed away. She used to run his business, open the mail, process the checks, and that hadn't been done in 6 months. When we got him enrolled in our PRP program, we started working with him over the course of a year. We ended up recouping almost $100,000 in unclaimed money because he had checks that were there that had not been processed, had not been cashed, anything. And as we went through and we looked for those checks, we had them reissued. And he went from the brink of homelessness to being able to pay his mortgage and the late fees and to get the HOA off of his back. So with support and help, those are some of the things that you can do. PRP, depending on the severity or depending on the stability, you can receive 3 visits a month, 6 visits a month is the maximum. But that person comes into the home, into the community, and meets you exactly where you are to help support you in that moment.
And when we're talking about PRP, those resources are more so in Maryland, DC area. But I do know in some places it may be harder to get PRP. So you have to kind of be, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but you have to be
Resourceful.
right, resourceful
And
and really,
assertive.
right, and
I
really,
would say assertive and looking at and exploring all of your treatment options. The local health department can connect you through one phone call to your local support services that are taking new clients.
okay, okay. So again, when we look at why people don't get mental health treatments, I got three people here. We have Ms. Rosa that came over, Latino. You can represent the African American. Miss Kelly there, Dr. Kelly. Why don't people within the faith-based community get mental health treatment?
Oh, so unfortunately, so many of them have taken the back to the word you use, stigma, that is demonic. And it's again lack of understanding as well as fear. Not realizing, and I say this all the time, that the brain will malfunction just like any other organ of the body. And until we come to that realization, then yes, the faith based, the first thing they want to do is, oh, that's demonic. I don't want to deal with it, which is unfortunate. If anyone should be able to reach out and be an encouragement, be a help, be a support, it should be faith based.
Okay. From a when I answer the question from a male perspective, why do men, yeah, men, why is it do you think there's a stigma with men for as
Men are afraid. They're afraid they don't want to be the lower their esteem. Really. They don't want nobody to know that they feel bad. I had talked with some people. I had 3 years before I saw one guy decided to be a doctor. I had to be patient and keep working with him, and he finally got the money to get help. Unfortunately, within a week we got help, he died.
Wow, yeah.
And, all his buddies came around me and told me he wanted their help so bad, but it was too late. He froze to death and he was gone.
Okay.
Yes. And one thing, from the faith-based standpoint, we always talk about the fruits of the spirit, and the fruit of the spirit. We talk about love, patience, long suffering. But when it comes to deal with people with mental illness, those things seem to go out the window. There's not the endurance that we need, that we can help people in these type of situations. Okay. So we need to reevaluate our attitude in the Christendom, how we deal with people with mental illnesses. There's a lot of impatience and intolerance, which is unfortunate.
Until mental
Okay. So that was when we talked about stigma and people not getting mental health. When you talk about the Latino community, why people don't get help?
Most of the time because they feel that they don't go to see a doctor, a psychiatrist or a psychologist because they think that it's just for people that have a severe mental illness, but uh, mental illness starts with something very mild and it can get worse if we don't treat it.
Okay.
Sometimes people don't feel that it's something that needs treatment, and that's why they don't reach out.
And I think you brought up something, a place where I wanted to go. What happens when people don't get help for mental health treatment? So what happens when people don't get help? What happens?
Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing is a growing increase in suicide. Um, and that is unfortunate. My 13-year-old son, within the last 2 weeks, has experienced one of his classmates committing suicide. Children are becoming younger and younger. They're carrying more and more burdens. And as young adults become adults, the burden continues to grow. And some people feel like they have no way out.
Okay. So again, we're talking about what is the impact of untreated or poorly treated mental illness.
It causes a disruption in the whole family because it's not just the individual with the mental health. it's those that they're associated with as well. So it can bring on extra stress that has brought on fear. I know of a situation where the parent, because of the denial, because of the refusal to get help, she ended up having to get a protective custody, restraining order.
Stay away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the child. Not that's her child. She didn't want it. She, concerned about her child, but her well-being was at stake as well. So it's a domino effect all the way across.
Okay, okay. So again, in the news recently, we've had a couple of cases where it turned out that the person tried to get mental health treatment, or they did, they just didn't get mental health treatment. So when we talk about the impact of untreated mental illness, is also people can wind up being in jail. They wind up killing someone. Um, they, for example, we had a gentleman that we used to work with, and you guys know him if I told you. We used to work with. He was a young guy. He was really smart. He had gone away to college. The first time he went away to college, he got a scholarship. He had an episode in college. He came back home, and rather than kind of getting the treatment or whatever, he got some, but not all the way. He tried to go back to college again. It didn't work out, so he's back home now. He eventually, what happened is he wound up killing someone. He wound up stabbing her. She was walking her dog, and he wound up killing her. So when you talk about the impact of untreated mental illness, it can be death. So that's why it's so important. While we always preach people getting mental health treatment, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be in a psych ward, or it doesn't mean that you're going to be, you have to take medications. It just means that it's important for you to talk to somebody.
Yes, absolutely.
So when we talk about women in stress, let's kind of change that a little bit. When we talk about women in stress, what's the big deal about women in stress? Why do we think women, do we have more stress than men, or different stress, or what do we think?
You carry different responsibilities, and where the supports,
Yes.
then the supports are different. You're expected to support your husband. You're expected to support your household. You're expected to work to a certain degree. You're expected to support your children. And you're supposed to do all of these things, being fabulous all of the time, and not ever have a moment to yourself. So part of it is the expectation, developing healthy relationships with your partner, being able to have those tough conversations, being able to say, hey, I need a few minutes just as you need a few minutes, building schedules, creating organization. It sounds difficult, but when you take the time and you put in a little bit of work in the beginning, structure helps everyone, from the children to your spouse to your relationship. And it's really, really important because in our everyday lives as parents, and I have 4 children and a granddaughter, and a puppy. So there has to be time for all of those parties, and a husband. It has to be time for everybody. So with time for everybody, then there's no time for me. So you schedule a little bit of time for you so you can pull it all together. But women carry a lot of the stressors because we have to. The expectation, you're always the strong friend, or you're the strong parent. Some women are single parents, just as some men are single with raising their children. But the stressors of everyday life are completely different for women than they are men.
Yeah, so they, as she said, and they get to the point where they feel like, well, I'm just a robot. Nobody cares, and especially if they don't have a support group or someone. It don't even have to be a group, just another individual that they can interact with. They feel all alone. They begin to feel lonely, feel isolated. Depression sets in. That the stress can be so overwhelming that to the point that they just get to a point where they feel like they're just existing. And what is life? What am I here for? So it can be a lot.
Anything on that, Rosa?
Yeah.
Miss Rosa?
Ah, en español, en el caso de mujeres también el estado hormonal ayuda a que la mujer tenga altos niveles de estrés y también no se le da importancia porque también el estigma se dice que la mujer es más débil, ¿verdad? Lo cual es un estigma, pero también importante saber que las hormonas tienen mucho que ver en el estado emocional de la mujer. Y es siempre bueno consultar con su médico, con su doctor primario y darle importancia a los estados emocionales.
What can we do to change that?
Identify and work on healthy relationships. And I think a lot of the things we think back to our parents and their relationships, and you look at longevity and being married early in life versus later on in life. There are a series of different differences. Now in 2022, we're looking at how does a person treat you? Is a person available for you? Is a person, it doesn't necessarily mean I need you to make $1 million, but are you willing to give me half of what you have so we can become greater together? So it's coming from those approaches. And so being 46, my mother was married to my father. We had a great life, but they didn't have a healthy relationship. So a healthy relationship versus living in a big house is more important because I'm now teaching my sons how to be and their father. We're watching how we interact, so then they have a better example in being men and what being a father and being in a healthy relationship looks like. Children emulate and learn from their parents, so we have to change our parenting styles. It's okay to apologize if you're wrong. It's okay to say I love you. It's okay for your 16-year-old to want a hug or need a kiss. It's okay for all of those things because it fosters a healthy relationship. My husband is 50 years old and he said his father has never hugged him. That is detrimental to. So now he's overly affectionate with our children.
And I think that's a good thing. Well, a good thing because you talked about your son, a classmate, dying by suicide. You see that more and more with kids. Women stress. Kids have a lot of stress on us, and a lot of it has to do with. It, let me say this: we were stressful. We had stress then back to when we were growing up, but we didn't have the internet like we have it now.
Absolutely.
You'd be surprised. I'm shocked how many people really care what people think about them on the internet. And I'm not talking about just kids. I'm talking about adults.
Right. That's right.
I mean, like how many likes? What is it? How many shares? How many?
They lose that this is for entertainment.
Right.
There are some things that are going to be educational and you can take things away from it and some things that have value. But like my husband said this morning, he was like, when you get on TikTok or Instagram, it should be for a purpose. Like everybody shouldn't have access.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that you just wonder. There was a child that died from a challenge called a suffocation challenge.
Wow.
She tried to string or something around her neck, and you're supposed to choke yourself almost to the point of passing out. So how do you differentiate almost passing out and dying? And now she's deceased.
Yeah.
It's awful.
And again, it goes back to where the parents are
I'm gonna
going.
shift it.
I think it's
Kids don't get enough attention. That's why they want the media. The thing is about the attention.
that's right.
Once
That's
they
right.
get more attention, the more they're going to get the media.
Mhm.
And then once they get they're no good, they go to somebody else. They're not important again. Then they go back to who am I? They want to commit suicide. Nobody cares about it.
So one of the things we're talking about then is communications in the home, which is a
I'm just talking about
lacking.
different mental health things.
Okay. Yeah, where so that communication is totally lacking. So they end up reaching out, such as you said, to TikTok and others because they feel like they're more interested in me than these that I live with. Be amazed of how many people that live with folk, and you ask them a simple thing is, what is the child's favorite color? They couldn't tell you because they don't know. You mentioned your husband saying about getting hugged by the dad. I think I must have been 48, and I would go over and I would say my father grew up that way, and I would tell him I love you, and I may not get any response, and I'd hug him when I first he kind of. At the end though, I think I must have been 48, and I called the house and I said, tell Daddy I said I love him. He says I love you too, baby. I literally sit there and cried because it was the first time. He would always say, y'all know I love you. There's a difference when they say verbally to you, I love you. And that was one of the things that we got into the habit afterwards of being able to say and communicate with one another. To be able to tell a child that's going through something, oh, you'll be okay, just go into your room. No, that's where the breakdown is. No, I need to find out what's going on, and be able to let them know that no matter how bad you think it is, feel free to come talk to me. Do it means I'm gonna take it all easily all the time? No, let's be real, okay? But the final analysis is I'm the one that's gonna be there with you and for you, and a lot of times they don't have that. So what? Instead of being too busy being told all the time about what they do wrong, instead of being encouraged in those things, which it may be one, two, or three things that they do good, well, then they need to be built up in those things so that they can do what? Learn its security. One thing that I have learned is that so many children coming out of homes where there's no father, we end up with not knowing having security because the security wasn't there. So then they got become bullies. So all of these things play a factor in how we communicate. What am I communicating in my home?
And I think with us, if you're a parent in 2022, an adult, we kind of have no excuse. We can say our parents didn't know, they didn't have the books, the
They did the best
therapy,
that they
right? They did the
could.
best they
Mm-hmm.
can, and even parents now are doing the best they can. But we should know better now, certain things.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of resources.
Yeah.
There are a lot of resources. There are a lot of community groups. There are a lot of self help groups. There are even connections that you can make through the school preemptively. The situation with, I see in our communities, if we wait until the problem escalates, if you show up at the school at the initial IEP meeting and you are the driver for your child, the school
What's the
has
IEP meeting?
an individualized education plan. And that is not just for children that have behavioral differences. My son has a specified learning disorder. He had a traumatic brain injury at 3. And so his brain functions a little differently. So he thinks a little differently. He's on the cusp of legal blindness, but the school said he had ADHD. No, we couldn't see. And that is the difference. But I stayed on the school. I advocated for him. I am at every IEP meeting. If it looks like it's not going to go in our favor, I ask for an advocate. I lay out my case and I make the school do what I want them to do because I'm paying the taxes. You're not going to, if you don't play an active role and
Mm-hmm.
participate,
That's
your
true.
child will be whatever they want them to be.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the point, is that advocacy, um, the resources. I'm always amazed how people will say, "Well, did you do so and so?" Well, the doctor said no, or this person said no. Like for example, that gentleman in New York who I think I forgot exactly. So many people now. If he pushed somebody in front of a train, or he shot different people,
Mm-hmm.
but his when you looked at it, no, no, I'm sorry, I know what it was. It was the gentleman out west where during the Christmas massacre, he drove his car into a group of people. One of the things his mother was saying when she wrote a letter, was how he tried to get help, right? And for me, I think at this point we can't let that ride. We can't let that slide. Okay, I tried to get help, and they wouldn't. The doctor didn't help me, or they wouldn't admit me, or I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. We have to be an advocate, like you were saying for your when you mentioned your son.
Mhm.
Because if we're not strong advocates, then that's going to be
You okay?
You're right.
there'll be a problem, because there are people who diagnosed with schizophrenia, PTSD, and you may look at them and may who are actively psychotic almost, and they know how to get help.
Mm-hmm.
They know they have no problem calling the mayor's office if they need to, and guess what? They get help.
We have members that go to the fire department, members that call 911 and say, I feel like I'm about to hurt myself or someone else and I need help.
Hmm.
The first step is just reaching out for assistance and help, being able to reach out to a non judgmental person,
Mm-hmm.
someone that is receptive. There are several different numbers that we will provide. in the next few minutes for suicide awareness. There's a text to chat therapy free modality that's offered through the state of Maryland, where you can text for a counselor, for someone to talk to, and there's also a phone number that a few churches have put out where you can reach a person for either prayer or just to have someone to talk to. So having those resources, if you are a person that is ashamed or afraid, or you don't want anyone to know that you're receiving therapy, seek out a therapist that does a cash pay option. There does not have to be a medical record. This is a self pay service and it does not have to be processed through any insurance. If that is what is stopping you from getting help, there's a resource and there's a way that you can get the service without having to worry about anybody ever finding out.
Right. And you can also go onto our website at igbatt.com, and we do have some of those information out there. Is there anything as we wrap up, Miss Rosa, that you want to say?
Bueno, para la comunidad latina les invito a que nos contacten, a que busquen ayuda si tienen problemas emocionales y que no lo tomen, que le den la importancia que le deben dar, porque muchas veces no buscamos ayuda a tiempo y las cosas tal vez tienen tratamiento oportuno y pueden curarse, pero si les dejamos pasar mucho tiempo puede convertirse en algo más severo. Así que hay mucha ayuda, busquen ayuda y no tengan miedo de preguntar, ¿verdad? Si no confían en las personas que tienen alrededor, pueden consultar con su médico primario. El médico primario siempre los puede referir a un programa de salud mental si es que necesitan ayuda en salud mental.
Any closing words before we break for this time?
We want to know if anybody have any closing words.
Okay.
All right, well, like I said, we're QCI Behavioral Health. We definitely in PG County. If you need any assistance for mental health services, contact us. The people here to provide care for you. You don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed. We're definitely here to assist you. You don't have to have any health insurance at all. So come on.
Okay. So you heard it. You don't have to have any health insurance if you're here in PG County. That was the rep from QCI along with other people. You can be able, we'll have that phone number on our website. So we're going to log off for now. We'll be back.